Hey, welcome back, you guys, for Giving AF podcast. This is a second chance podcast that we use for marketing material for our nonprofit, our mentorship program called Second Chance Mentors, where we work with boys that have been kicked out of school for either fighting or drugs, and we try to help them get back into school and finish school and just provide them with a role model or someone that they can come to with their issues. A lot of these kids don't have a supportive, male father figure in their lives, so we just try to come alongside, not to replace their fathers, but just to have that support that a lot of these kids are missing, because I feel like that's a common denominator to a lot of kids going in the wrong direction. So today, and thank you to the Texas Rangers, because this afternoon they gave us 20 tickets, so we're going to be taking a bunch of the boys to a Rangers game. A lot of them have never been. We're also bringing some of the spouses of the mentors, so it'll be cool just to get everyone together and kind of just spend time together. And just, I like when the husbands bring their wives to the events, because I like these kids to see what a healthy marriage looks like. A lot of these kids have never seen that, and it's not their fault, so it's cool for them to see it modeled, because how do you ever know how to have a healthy marriage, or to have, same thing with being a father. How do you know how to become a man if you've never seen it modeled for you, and culture nowadays is trying to make it seem like fatherhood isn't important, and clearly we know, especially, biblically, how important the father is of the household, So again, thank you guys for listening. It means so much to me that you guys come and listen to me ramble for 30 minutes and our guests to, kind of show off the things they got going on in their lives. And I'm really excited about today's episode. This is going to be really cool, because when Chris Davila and I did a podcast I'd say maybe 2 months ago, I didn't realize the impact that could have. And Chris had met someone, I don't remember.
Roger Myers is his name. Yep.
Chris had met Roger Myers, and through Roger, the guest today, Dax, had kind of heard the podcast. And I was just scrolling through social media, and Chris sent me something, was like, hey man, look at this. And it literally, it makes me want to tear up. And so Dax was showing the podcast that we did in was it an elementary school or middle school?
It was a DAEP. So it was junior high school.
So exactly like the schools we go to, where the kids have been kicked out for some sort of, and we would never be able to play our podcast in the DAP that we go to, just because, we talk about God, and I
don't know if I can, I just do it.
And that's what really was so cool, because I don't know, it's just God's taken out of schools, you know what I mean? And even talking about, how important men role models and stuff, a lot of that stuff is being removed from schools. And so when I saw that, I knew immediately, I was like, I need to get in touch with this guy. I want to know where he has this, that could only come from God, but where does he have this courage to be able to, you know what, I'm going to stand on what I believe in, and I'm going to show this video to these kids.
Yep.
So immediately we got in contact. You actually reached out, which was cool, through the website. But I had already known who you were. So that's why it was really cool, because I saw this come across on the website, and I was like, that's the guy that Chris sent me the video of. I was really excited to, did I call you back immediately?
Immediately. Yeah. We were at the house, and I'd sent the email through the website, and just within minutes, my phone ding. I was like, hey, it's the guy. So,
yeah. It was really cool to me too when I saw it. I was like, Dax Bruner. I was like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And then after talking, we realized we have a lot of similarities that, the life that we've been through. So what I wanted to do, and first of all, thank you guys so much. Dax's wife is here. I'm sorry. Linda. So Linda's here with Dax. They drove, hour and a half, 2 hours from Bonham, which is almost to the border of Oklahoma. So that's, they definitely put in some effort to get out here to do this. So I'm really appreciative of you guys coming.
Thanks for having us.
So what I want to do is just kind of, you have a great story, man. And I think that it could encourage someone who's going through the lifestyle that we used to live, man. So if you could kind of just maybe start off with where you're from, what your upbringing was like, set the stage as far as, parent figures and.
Yep. So originally I'm from a town called Owasso, Oklahoma, and pretty normal childhood. It wasn't, mom and dad worked, and grandparents were great. Or, everything was cool.
Yeah.
So my 8th grade year, after I finished my 8th grade year, my mom worked for the phone company, and she got a transfer up to St. Louis, Missouri. And so we moved. And so I left everything I'd known, all my friends, all that. And we moved to a tiny town called Oakville, Illinois.
How old were you at this point?
I was 8th grade, so 13,
that's
14.
That's a tough age to start over.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. So, we moved to Oakville, Illinois, because my mom's brother was stationed at an Air Force base in Illinois. And so that's the town he lived in. So that's the town mom picked.
Yeah.
And it's one of those deals where if you're not from there, you're just not going to fit in. You're not going to be accepted. You're not going to, do all that. And so, like we were talking earlier, I got in where I fit in.
Yeah.
And so the kids that were, smoking weed and doing all that and all that. So, over time it became, that's who I was. I was the weed guy, and so if you wanted something, you came to my house. Yeah. And so anyway, so my high school years, that was kind of it. That's what we did.
That's literally my exact story.
Yeah. And so mom and dad divorced when I was 15, and dad kind of took off to Florida. We didn't know that at the time. I didn't know where dad was pretty much my whole high school career.
Wow.
I just didn't know. And, but mom did, what she could, and she worked very hard, and, she wanted to make sure we were provided for, and she did, so it was great. I mean, a really good influence on me was my mom.
That's awesome.
She was fantastic. And so anyway, I graduated high school, and I the day after I graduated, I moved back to Oklahoma. Because there was nothing for me in Illinois. I didn't like it. They didn't like me. It's what it was. And so I packed up my pickup and I moved back to Oklahoma and lived with my grandparents. So I stopped doing everything. Like, I didn't do drugs anymore. I was clean. All that, nothing. And so ended up I got married within a couple of years of being back in Oklahoma, and I was married to Stacy is her name, for 10 years. And we had 2 kids, great kids. It's just, we kind of went that way, and we got divorced, and it actually worked out great, but we can talk now, so it's good.
Oh, that is good.
It's great. But anyway, so got divorced. In the midst of all of that, my grandfather died. Okay. Now, my grandfather, you have to understand, I loved him the most. Like, he was my guy. He was it. You're right. He's who I strive to be as a man. He was kind. He was generous. He was successful. He was, everything that I wanted to be. And he died pretty suddenly. Like, it wasn't expected. And so in that time, I felt bad. So I thought, well, you know what? I want to feel good. So I went back to doing what I was doing. So I started out smoking a little bit of weed, and then a little bit of weed became a lot of cocaine, and a lot of cocaine became some meth. And then it just, it's whatever I could get my hands on. And that went on for quite some time. So in the midst of all that, in the midst of, being a drug addict and being divorced and everything just kind of falling apart and me not facing my problems, I did what everybody else does, and I ran from them. So I ran to Texas in 2005. And my brother lived in Rockwall at the time. My mom had moved down here, and my brother had actually bought her house. So anyway, I moved in with my brother, who was an addict as well. So I'm moving from one situation to another where he's already connected down here, and and I just jumped right in. And so, every day, every waking moment was, how am I going to get drugs? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And I did what, people do, and I just started selling to support my habit. Yep. And I was selling a bunch. It wasn't a little bit. So in the midst of all that, I actually met my wife, who I have to say had no part of that life. She never was in that life. But I put on a pretty good front. I was functioning, But anyway, so over time, I was getting careless and getting, radical, I guess, and I got arrested. And so I got arrested. I went to city jail for a minute, and Linda bailed me out. And in the midst of that, we got married.
Did she know?
Not to the extent that I was. No, she did not.
So did you getting arrested have to bring some stuff to light? Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, 1,000%. So this is kind of where the story, well, not where the story gets crazy. The whole story is crazy. But so anyway, so I get bailed out, right? In the in-between time, we went to Vegas and got married, right? Because people had already bought their tickets. We had family coming. They had no idea, none. And so anyway, so we went to Vegas, we got married, and it's a miracle that she's here today. It's a There's no other explanation but God. Okay, so I was going to prison. There was no doubt, right? So in the midst of all of that, I'm out on bond. And so while I'm out on bond, I've got to get an attorney. I've got to pay my bond stuff. I got to, all these things. And so now I've got 3 felonies hanging over me. Because when I got arrested, it was 3.
Yeah.
One manufacturing distribution, the others were possession with intent. And so I'm not going to get a job. So what do? I go back to selling drugs.
With the justification of I got to pay for these things. So I need to,
totally. Nobody's going to give me a shot. So I got to go back to doing this. So in the midst of that, I get arrested again. Oof. Right now I'm habitual. Okay. Yeah. And so I went to Collin County Jail for just a hot minute. It wasn't long at all. But anyway, so I sat there for a little bit because she was going to bail me out again, which she did. So I'm back out again and I'm running, like I'm going hard. So now I'm going to prison probably 20 years. The original DA offer was 15 if I pled guilty, but most likely 20. Yeah. So anyway, my life's over. I'm running. I'm going to get as high as I can, as much as I can, and you can catch me when you catch me.
Are you even? Yes, you're not even reporting or anything. You're just like, I'm straight.
Well, I'm calling in, but I'm not showing up.
Yeah, because you're worried that they'll just take you.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm out doing, crazy stuff. So my first court date for all of this was March 31st of 2007. Okay, and you'll notice it's tattooed on my hand right there because that's the day I got clean. Oh, so anyway, so I'm at a drug house in South Dallas, and I'm sitting there with a bunch of junkies shooting heroin, doing all this stuff. So I borrowed a car, which basically I stole this car from this lady that was in this house, drove to Plano to the apartment that she had rented because I had lost our house, I had lost our cars, we had nothing. I lost
she was having to bail you out and do all this.
Yeah, everything that we had went to keeping me out of jail. So she had rented an apartment in Plano.
She must have really liked you.
Dude, let me tell you something. She
must have really liked you.
She
saw something.
She saw potential. Let's just say that. Let's say that. We can say that now. At the time, it was like the trash is going to take itself out, and he's going to prison. So I'm just going to get divorced. I'm going to get through this. So I showed up. I don't even know what time of the morning it was, but I was high and it was gross, and I smelled, and I can't imagine what I looked like. But anyway, so I'm knocking on the door like, I need $20 to get to court, because I told myself I'm not going to court, and something just kept telling me, you got to go to court. You got to go to court. And I was like, I'm not doing it. And so I was like, all right, fine. So we went to court, and,
did she go with you?
No. I showed up at the house or at the apartment. I was like, I need $20 for gas. And, she gave me $20, and we talked for quite a while, and she had left to go to work. And I'm sitting in the apartment just by myself, and I was just like, I don't want to die, but I cannot live like this anymore. And so that's when I cried out to God, which was March 30th of 2007. I was like, I just can't do this anymore, and I need help. And I didn't bargain with him. I didn't say, if you're real, you'll do this or none of that. I just said, I can't do it. So I've done it my way. We're going to do it your way.
I think he respects that more. The ultimatums are like, God doesn't owe us anything.
Yeah, it's like when Jesus was tempted in the desert. He said, we don't bargain with God. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. And so that's what I did. And so I took the $20 for gas, and I went to McKinney and met the attorney that I had not paid for. Anyway, so he said, I got you a continuance for 60 days. And I was like, all right, cool. So in that 60 days, I took the car back, which is what you're supposed to do, right? Smart. Took the car back, showed back up at the apartment, and I must have slept for a couple of days at the apartment. So anyway, so in the midst of in the middle of that 60 days, I was cleaned up, got a job, and was doing the things I was supposed to do. And I actually got a job that guys like us don't get. I worked at the corporate office of Motel 6 in their finance department.
That's cool.
Well, yeah, I'd done corporate collections for years, and that's kind of what I knew. Well, my big idea was, since nobody's going to hire me with these felonies hanging over me, that I'll get temp jobs, because back then they didn't background check you back then, and so that's what I did. I went for a temporary job. It was supposed to be 90 days,
and they liked you and kept you on?
Within 2 weeks, they wanted to give me a full-time job. So then I had to come clean to my boss. Shout out to Loretta. Loretta Riley's her name. And I told her, I said, listen, this is what happened. I've got these felonies hanging over me. They're drug charges. You know, I just laid it out for her. And have you ever seen NCIS?
The show? Yeah.
Yeah, where Gibbs smacks DiNozzo in the back of the head all the time. No. Well, Loretta hit me in the back of the head and said, okay, come on. So we went to the CEO's office and they hired me. And I worked there about 9 years.
That just gave me chills. It's sometimes you don't realize how far you can get with the truth.
Just tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're trying to get ahead, tell the truth.
Yeah, it's so
because
good.
people will give you they'll give you a shot.
Yeah. Especially if you put the ball in their court and give them the opportunity, rather than them finding out that you're being deceitful and then it's over with.
Don't do that. Don't do that, because that reputation will follow you too.
Yeah.
You know, word to get out.
And that stress and anxiety you have to carry of who's going to find out when you're trying. That's just the worst.
I'll tell you, a guy, a friend of mine, we call him Mookie, but anyway, he was a former Navy SEAL, and he's the one that turned me on to that. Back in our business days, we had a pin making business, but anyway, Mookie was a customer, he became a friend, and he called me one day and he says, "Hey, so you're a cokehead?" I was like, "What?" And he goes, you need to own that before somebody owns it for you. So you need to tell everybody that'll listen about your past. And that's when I really started telling it. And it was that advice that really,
it's such good advice.
It is.
And a lot of people would be scared of that. Me and Chris Davila today, sitting in my truck, we're talking about how we're both very open with our story, because then no one can hold it against us. Yeah. Like if I put all this on the table, you know what it is. Now you can judge me for me and not.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly it. You know, if you've gone through it, tell it. Right. And that's the other thing is your testimony. Right. So that your story is a gift from God. And if you don't tell it, then you waste the gift. It's that simple. You know, we were talking earlier, we just took 28 kids to camp. Yeah, and every single one of those kids got up in front of their peers and told their story.
Oh, it's so good.
Because that's what we urge them to do.
You start them at that age and get comfortable with telling their dirt. I mean, that's how you change generations.
Well, and they don't know it, but we're up to some sneaky stuff, because public speaking is a great skill to have. Yeah. And if you have that, you're 10 steps ahead from everybody else.
Especially if you can get comfortable with public speaking, airing out your own laundry. Yeah. Your dirty laundry.
Then you can talk about anything.
There's nothing that'll be scary after that.
Yeah. Try to hold me back. You can't.
That's really smart, Dax. That's like above just learning about God.
This is where my grandpa comes in, because he taught us lessons like that all the time. He was sneaky about it, you know.
Before we go forward, so I want to ask you a couple questions that I just got in the back of my head. Your dad left at the age that a boy needs his dad.
Sure. Yep.
Like, do you feel like that played any role in, like, you know, the direction that you went, and
100%.
Not feeling like you had that father present at that time?
100%. Yeah. And that's another kind of underlying reason why we do youth ministry too, is I really needed that. And I didn't have that. So if we can be that for somebody else, then that's what we need to do.
Amen. I mean, I feel like that's
what you're called to do.
Yeah. That's it right there. That's a perfect way to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we just didn't have it. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish with everything that we're doing now.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So now you just got the job. Sorry, I kind of distracted.
No, you're good.
You just got the job doing the collections. And then, so what happens from there?
So while we're doing all of that, it's always in the back of your head, you know, if this goes south, if something happens, then what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So we started a pin making business, of all things. It sounds crazy, but that's what we did.
When you say pen, you mean like clips on a shirt?
Like
pen?
ink pens.
Okay.
Ink pens. So growing up, I kind of became obsessed with ink pens. And this is a strange story, but I'm going to tell it. So when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, as I said, and he would tell me, he'd say, Dax, if you want to know who's in charge, look at their wristwatch and look at their ink pen, because when people get a little bit of money, that's what they spend it on. And so watches are very expensive. So I became obsessed with pens because I could get them pretty cheap, right? And so anyway, I was always obsessed. And so one Christmas, my mom sent me a gift in the mail, and it was an ink pen made out of a 30-06 shell casing.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, it turns out my uncle made it. And I was like, man, we live in Texas. We could sell these, you know? So my big idea was we were going to take these things to gun shows and we're going to sell them and we're going to make all this money. It's going to be great. Well, we didn't make any money selling them at gun shows, right? So I called my uncle up and I said, look, if you send me 100 pins, I'm going to sell them at these gun shows and I'll keep 20% and whatever it is. I forget what the deal was, but anyway, so we kind of made that deal. Well, he sent me 2 shipments and he was like, listen, I ain't trying to work this hard. You need to come learn how to make these things. So we went up there on a weekend and he taught me how to operate a wood lathe. And, you know, we started making pins and we put them out online, and we didn't have much success to start. Obviously, we lost money, but he told me that. My uncle told me that. He said, "Listen," he said, "Don't plan on making any money to start with. You're going to have to give some stuff away to get going."
That's a great business advice, right there.
And that's what we did. So we started off on Instagram. So my daughter Taryn, my oldest daughter, she was visiting us, and she was 15, something like that. Anyway, she was on her phone like kids are, you know. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, and she said, well, I'm on Instagram. And I was like, what is Instagram? And she's just like, oh, it's great. You know, you show pictures and you do all this. This is back before you could even record a video on Instagram.
Yeah,
this is back
just
before,
pictures, yeah.
Back before Facebook screwed it up, right? So anyway, she goes, this would be good for your business. I was like, all right, cool. So we started an Instagram page that night, and I got hooked up with a guy named Austin Weiss. He is a motorcycle builder, but he was a spokesman for the NRA. So I was making bullet pins out of 308 shell casings. And so what I did was I sent 5 ink pins to Austin. And I said, 2's for you, 3's to give away. Right. So he did a giveaway on his page. He had like 450,000 followers on Instagram.
That's genius. And basically like said, hey, go follow this page and you can win a free pen.
That was the deal.
So
so within a couple of days, we had 20,000 followers on Instagram.
That's impressive.
And so we built that over time, and you know, we were successful in it. And then you know, so it kind of started fading away a little bit, and I was kind of moving on to something else. And I'm going to tell you how we got into youth ministry from this point. So we moved to a town called Gober, Texas. We had built a house in Anna, and we were like, we don't like the neighbors, so we're going to buy some land. So we found a property with 10 acres and a little house on it, and we were able to buy it and not have a house payment. So it was great. Yeah. And so we built a shop.
And most of that came from the
pen business, yeah.
That's
100%.
You make it sound like this small little, you're too humble.
Yeah.
This small little pen business. If you're buying 10 acres in a house, that's a big.
Well, it did what it was supposed to do.
That's awesome.
You know,
yeah.
And it was great. I love making pens. It was great. But I mean, I figured it up one time over the course of that business. We probably made 80,000 pens or something like that. And it was just like, you know, it's time to do something else. So one year, Linda came to me. I said, I'm going to read the Bible in a year. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. You go do that. Go ahead. I grew up in a Baptist church, and my mom made us read the Bible and all that stuff. And I was like, that's good for you. Go ahead. And so she every now and then she'd come in and she'd be like, wow, this story is great. And we'd talk about it or whatever. And then she got to the end of it and she said, well, I think there's more to this than what we're understanding. And I said, well, it sounds like we're going to church. And there was a little tiny Gober Baptist church 30 seconds from our house. And so we went there. And when we got there, it was full of kids. There was 3 pews just full of youth kids, right? And I was like, this is amazing, right? You're talking about a congregation of like 60 people. Okay, when you got 3 rows of...
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great. Well, we come back the next week and there's like 1 row. And the next week and there's no kids. I'm like, what is going on? Well, it turns out the week we showed up was the week after camp.
So they were all still on fire.
They were on fire, yeah. You go to Falls Creek for a week, and man, you'll be lit up, you know. And that's what happened. And so, you know, the businessman in me was like, "Well, you're missing out on this. You've got an opportunity here because I know they can get here because they were here.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to engage them?" And it turns out not much. And so we went to the pastor and was like, "Hey, we'd like to help with the youth program." And you know, I'd never done that. Yeah. I'm not trained in this. I didn't go to seminary. I didn't do anything. We just lived life and, you know, have a story to tell. And, you know, and so, anyway, so we started a youth program, and it grew over time, and it was great, and then, kind of outgrew it. And so we transitioned over to a different church, which is where I'm at now, New Zion Baptist Church right there, up in Bonham, and started, youth ministry there, and it's going well. It's going good.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And then you guys also have a huge project going on right now.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting. They use God's all over that.
It's crazy.
I can't even, can you share what's going on with
Yeah.
that?
So we're very blessed. Let me just start with at the Bonham ISD. Okay. So we have what's called a Pastoral Alliance, which I'm a part of, and it's all the youth pastors locally get together, and we talk about what's needed at the school.
That's really cool, just to point out real quick, because a lot of times I don't see a lot of youth pastors coming together like that. It's almost like, oh, you have yours and we have ours. It's almost a competition.
It's market share versus, critical mass is what my pastor says. He said, we're too worried about market share. Don't worry about that. Get the word out. Get it to as many people as possible. And who cares who you work with? Work with them.
I really respect that.
Yeah. I mean, he's pretty unique in that. He's, but you're right. We worry so much about market share that we're overlooking the whole picture.
We make it about the small church instead of the big church.
The church, instead of the church, the body. And so we get together and we work really well together. So it's really, really cool. But anyway, in the midst of that, I have access to schools. So what we do is we do weekly lunch visits to the high school, and I actually do some mentoring at the junior high. It's just some specific boys that I go and spend time with every week and stuff like that. Well, a good friend of ours is the DAEP teacher, and she was like, "Hey, Dax, would you come, talk to the DAEP kids?" So I was like, "Yeah, I don't have time, or I don't do this. I don't do that."
It's just to put it out there. The DAP kids, that's a tough crowd to work with.
It's tough
because they really don't want you to work with you in the beginning. You have to show up consistently and break that show.
And that's the key. And you know this. That's the key with these kids is they lack consistency so much that when they see it, they respond well.
Yeah, that's good.
And so Heather asked me to come speak to him one day. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I went and spoke with him, and then I was like, well, okay, I can do it every other week. Okay. And she was like, cool. Because I've got another guy doing it every other week. I was like, no problem. And so the other guy stopped showing up. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it every week. So we've been doing it every week.
That's cool that you were willing to step in and answer that.
Yeah. Because he's just, they lack discipline and direction. That's what I tell them. You lack discipline and direction. And so let's give that to you.
So true. And with our program and the exact same thing of going into DAP in these schools, like I'm very adamant when I bring a new mentor in that like, hey, these kids have already had their dad leave. Mm-hmm. The last thing we can have is you try to form these relationships and then just bounce on these kids. Right. You know what I mean? Like we got to try to like really harvest this relationship.
For sure. And so, we've been doing the DAP thing for, this was our second full year. And, so one day, this building got vandalized. Okay. And there's an auditorium gymnasium building right next to the DAP classroom. Right. Well, this thing, they tore it up. They threw rocks through the windows and just destroyed it. And come to find out it was some of those kids. And I was so mad.
Did they actually find out the kids that did?
Oh yeah. I know every kid that was in there. And so anyway, I asked to tour the building. And our friend Megan Weaver, who's the principal at the junior high, says, well, come on, I'll let you in. So we went in and she and I got to talking, and her dream was to have a youth center. And I was like, man, you know what? I've been thinking about this too, because we've been driving by this building for 6 years and never been in it. And I'm like, man, this would be so cool. And what it is, basically, it's an old auditorium gymnasium building. It was built in 1936. And it's still intact. It's beautiful. And it seats over 700 in the auditorium. There's a stage so awesome up there. There's a full gym in the back. It's just everything you would need, right?
That's so perfect.
And so, I walked out of there and I was like, sounds like we're going to try to start a youth center, and we're going to try to do it with this building. And so we had a pastoral alliance meeting at our church, and the superintendent of Bonham ISD was there. And I said, Kelly, I need to talk to you. So what do I need to do to get that building? She said, you need to talk to me. And I said, well, let's do that. Right. And so this has been going on back and forth a little bit. And I actually got word while we were at camp that has gone to their attorneys now to write up the deal. So basically, what happened was Linda, me, a guy named Jason Busby, and Kelly Trompler, which are Bonham ISD employees, had a meeting, kind of telling them what we had in mind and what we wanted to do, and all of this stuff. And she presented it to the board, and they voted, "Let's do it." And so we've been granted, well, it's not official yet, but we've been granted a 10-year lease. That's not going to cost us anything. And we have use of that building to have a youth center.
That's so cool, man. That gives me chills, because I think that the lives that we could change and save if these kids had a place to go outside of school that was safe and there was positive things going on, you know, because a lot of these kids, their mom's working 2-3 jobs to pay the rent in the apartment, which means they get out of school and they have no supervision. They don't have anyone asking to see the report card. They don't have any help with their grades. They don't. And so if you could provide a place where it could actually be fun and they could learn and be safe, it's like the absolutely perfect idea.
Yeah. Discipline, direction, accountability.
Yeah.
That's what they need. And that's what we'll offer. And, you know, like within our youth group, I mean, it's pretty amazing to see, you know, the growth in those kids that come consistently. I mean, we've got kids that are, well, in fact, there was 5 or 6 of them got up at youth camp, told their story in front of 400 people.
That's so cool. That takes a lot of courage.
And they didn't hesitate. I didn't even know they were doing it. They just did it. And they got with the speaker the day before and said, "Hey, I want to share my story. Can we have some time while you're up there?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Because of your leadership, and they watch you share your story of things that you've overcome, and that's attractive to them. You know?
Yeah, it's just remarkable. Well, and I say this all the time: kids do what they see.
Yeah.
And if they see you as an example as to what not only you should do, but what it could become.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, it's unbelievable.
That is awesome.
It's unbelievable.
So are you guys responsible for the funds to fix the place up, or is it like you can?
So we're still in process. So we're going to be responsible for some of that. Yeah. Now the school had come in and done cleanup and got the plexiglass to fix the windows and stuff like that. So I think our biggest issue is going to be plumbing in that old building because it hasn't been used properly for quite some time. It's just really, it's become a liability to the school. So we were like, well, let's just take that headache from you and let's do something cool with it. So we haven't ironed out, you know, everything that's going to take place as far as financially goes. But we're starting our own 501c3 to get it going.
That was going to be my next question. So is this going to be separate than New Zion Baptist Church?
Correct. This will be its own. This will be its own entity, and we're calling it the Fannin Youth Initiative because we're in Fannin County. So FYI is what it's called.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so, so again, we're in process of setting up the 501c3. But yeah, it would be separate from the church.
Are there's probably grants available?
Yeah. So, Megan Weaver, which is the lady I mentioned before, she has experience in grant writing, which I tell her, I said, listen, I'm just a hustler from way back.
I don't know the first thing about it.
I'll get stuff done. But as far as doing all of that, she and her mother both have experience in that. So
that's a huge asset.
It is.
Like we haven't, there's grants available for the stuff we do, but I don't know the first thing about doing it. And a lot of times you go to hire someone for grants and there's no like guarantees or anything. You could spend a few $1,000s and get nothing.
Right.
And I don't know if is that me being irresponsible with the money that I do already have? It's hard.
It's hard to justify.
It is hard.
It's hard to justify. And you know, unless you got somebody behind you saying, do it, you know, it's just like, that's tough.
It is. That's a tough one.
Yeah. But we're definitely blessed in this venture, but we're just starting out. So
is the 501c3 going to be called FYI? Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man.
Yep.
That's going to be really cool.
Yep, that's the plan.
Do you guys have anything established for it as far as like social media or like
nothing
websites
yet.
or anything?
I've got an email address, I've got an email address, and that's it. But once that starts, you know, becoming a thing, I'll definitely put it out to you guys.
That's awesome. What is people that are listening, like people that are listening, how can they find you on social media?
So there's several actually. So I've got a little Instagram page that I do prayers every morning. It's called Verb Ministries, VERB Ministries, because Christianity is a verb and you got to actually do stuff. So Verb Ministries, I'm Dax Bruner on everything, DAXBRUNER. We've got New Zion Baptist Church, which I'm active on there every day. And then we also, me and a guy named Josh Lott, he's my best friend. We do a podcast called Small Towns, Big God.
Oh, that's
TOWNS. And it's really just a Bible study podcast. Right now we're in the book of John.
Is it on YouTube or
It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify, Apple.
Sweet,
but it's Small Towns with an S, Big God. And it's a funny story how me and Josh, he is my best friend in the whole world. But it's funny because he was a cop in Collin County when I got arrested.
That is funny.
Yeah. He was most likely at the jail when I got booked in.
I have a lot of police officer friends now.
Yeah.
And
he's a pastor at Ivanhoe Baptist now. He's not a cop
that's
anymore.
Cool.
Yeah, but we didn't meet when he was a cop. We met when he was a pastor.
So what are your you have the FYI going on and you have that youth youth center going on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see for your next steps as far as like in ministry or like in life? Like what are your next goals?
Well, the next goal would be to grow that youth center to what I think God could have it be.
I think it could be huge.
I think it could be too. The thing you need to understand, Fannin County is probably one of the poorest counties in Texas. There's a lot of generational poverty, and there's a lot of despair, a lot of just lack of hope, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Does along with that come drug addiction?
Oh, for sure. It's pretty rampant.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere and see it in Fannin County. And if you don't see it, then you're
don't know
just
what
not
you're looking
looking.
for.
You're not looking. But I again, I lived it, so I know what it looks like. I know what it smells like. I know what it sounds like, and it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So the hope would be to grow that as large as we can, and grow the church. That's what we're called to do is to grow the church. And so, just to continue to do that and to see where God takes it, because, if you can't outrun your calling, a friend of mine tells me you can't outrun your calling. So quit trying. So we're going to be in the midst of that and see what happens.
That's so good, man. Yeah. And it's reaching back out to kids, as you know. I mean, I love doing it. I just think that people don't understand the impact that has even long term. It's not just that immediate kid. It's generational.
It is. And we tell them all the time, you guys have the ability to change your family tree.
Yeah.
You have that ability. Now you need somebody to show you how. Yeah. Yep. And that's what we'll always hold up our end, but you have the ability to do it. You just need to know that you can. And so the biggest thing for us is accountability, encouragement, discipline, direction, all those things. We tell them all the time, you guys get two things every day when you wake up. You get a chance and a choice. You get a chance to make an impact, and you get to choose whether it's good or bad. So
true.
You get to take it.
You get a chance and a choice.
Yep.
That's good. I've never heard that before. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. When I hear the, demographics of where you said Fannin County, do you guys go up, is it all spiritual stuff, or is there even you going to do financial literacy type stuff?
Yeah. So, and in fact, that's kind of why we came also, not only to do your podcast, but we're picking your brain on your mentorship program because that's not something that we've done. So that's the plan, life skills, finance, job interviews, how to get an apartment, how to set up a bank account, all these things.
Yep.
Because
credit is a huge one.
Yeah, it is. And so I kind of got inspired to do it. I taught a lesson at DAEP one day. I'm actually a substitute school teacher too, which is weird.
That's cool.
I walk in looking like I look, and I'm like, here we go, kids. But I was subbing in DAEP because I'm one of the only ones that'll do it. And I thought, well, what can we teach them today? And they're all talking about, I'm going to get out of school and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. I said, well, I'm going to give you some reality. I'm going to give you some numbers. So we went out and we figured out what the median income for Fannin County is, and and what rent would be, cars, everything, insurance, all of it. And I broke it down. And I said, well, at the end of the month, you're negative $1,000. So what are you going to do? And so I said, you guys need to be realistic in your goals, but you need to shoot for them.
That's
don't
awesome.
don't aim low because you'll hit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so they kind of got brought to reality as far as finances go in that. And then we started talking about, okay, now what can you do to increase that number? And so it went well.
Dude, that's great. I've never even taught it that way, but I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah.
Especially showing them, I think creating the budget.
Yeah.
And these kids are like, I'm going to drive a Ferrari. And you're like, okay, well, there's $2,500 a month. You know what I mean? They're just unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, my favorite one is, what are you going to do after you graduate? I'm going to be a streamer. Huh? Well, and then I asked him, I said, well, why don't you do that now? You got YouTube.
It's so
you have
true.
access. Do it.
because there's 1 out of 5 million that make it.
I said, do you know statistically what you're saying is 0? Yeah. You're not going to do that. You know why? Because you're not doing it now.
So true.
And so, yeah, they don't like my tough love sometimes.
I'm having to work with a couple of kids, and I haven't been able to be as direct as you were. But I think I should, because I think I'm doing a disservice. I've got a few kids that think that they're going to be rappers. And,
oh yeah.
And don't get me wrong, maybe a kid does, right? Mm-hmm. But let's go with the statistics. Let's look at the probability of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got kids like, man, I don't need to do school. I'm going to be a rapper. And I'm just like, man, I knew 50 people that were going to be rappers in high school, and not one of them's a rapper, and I don't even know where they're at.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what's going on. Because they weren't setting realistic goals and working towards these realistic goals. Left themselves just 30 and with nothing.
With nothing. No skills, no ambition, no desire, no nothing. Yeah, it's 100%.
Man, so it's crazy. And I'm so excited that you came. Your story, ours is so similar. Like, I moved from Virginia Beach to Philadelphia when I was 13. My parents got divorced. Mine was a little different. My mom was the one that went, and she still tried to be around. I'm not saying she just completely ditched, but our story is so much the same drug progression, you know what I mean? Like having a feeling, calling towards kids. And it's so crazy how just listening to that, because it's not often that people can get out of that old lifestyle.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean? Well, and the other thing is the fact that I did not do a day in prison.
We never even went back to that.
Not one day.
So how did that happen?
So the continuances went on for 2 years.
Okay.
So I was on bond for 2 years, right? And so in the midst of that, I got a very good attorney thanks to my father-in-law. I had to come clean to him too. That was a conversation that was not fun. But anyway, so he helped us. He helped us get an attorney. And
you had to prove yourself for this wasn't like immediate, right? Like you had a few months now of sobriety before.
Yeah. And so the original attorney dropped me because I didn't pay him, right? So we were like, oh, what do we do? And so I how when they say one will be appointed to you, that's not true. That's not true. They're like, you make too much money. I was like, I don't make any money. What are you talking about? And so anyway, we had to get with my father-in-law, Robert, I'm the favorite son-in-law, by the way. So anyway, Robert got us in contact with a very good attorney. She was actually a prosecutor in Collin County before she was a criminal defense attorney.
Good, yeah.
Oh, man. And so anyway, so 2 years went by. We were getting continuance after continuance, and I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I got to prove to a judge that I'm, worthy of probation. And so the day came where we were finally going to go to trial, and Judge Dry in Collin County was kind of notorious for back issues. And I guess they were in chambers, and he was like, man, my back's killing me and all this stuff, right? So the prosecutor came out and sent every witness against me home, all of them. And the judge is like, I don't know who told you to do that, but we're doing this today, because he assumed he was going to give me a continuance. So I was like, sweet. So we go into the courtroom, and it was me, Linda, my father-in-law, and his wife, and then the prosecutor, my attorney. And so he really only asked me one question, and it was like, Mr. Bruner, do you expect us to believe that you're not on drugs anymore? And I was like, well, with all due respect, it's on you to prove that I am. So, whatever. And so that was it. And so the judge goes out of the courtroom for, a few minutes, comes back, and I'll never forget this. And I may mess up what people say to me sometimes, but I will never forget this. He says, I don't know if you're a legal genius or the luckiest man in the world, Mr. Bruner, but I suggest you buy a lottery ticket because you're not going to prison. I was like, what? And so anyway, he gave me 10 years probation, which is the max you can get in Texas.
Like it's deferred or something?
Yeah. And so I got deferred on 3 of the 4. So I still carry 1, but so 3 are off. But I completed my 10-year probation. I was never late for an appointment, never missed an appointment, never failed a drug test. I was the least of their worries.
That's so awesome, Dad.
And so, we did the 10 years, got my driver's license back. It was sweet,
God allows us to walk through things for now what the glory that it can bring to him. You know what I mean? Like he allowed you to have those years of, darkness.
Yeah.
Because now that story gives you the impact to be able to help these kids.
For sure. So, and that's why I say, if in your testimony, if it's a gift from God, if you don't share it, you waste the gift.
So good.
You got to share it.
We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the sharing of our testimony.
That's it.
Tattooed on my arms.
Yeah, there's no other explanation but God for our stories.
So
and
good.
And without him, we ain't here.
So true. And it's sad because I know so many people that haven't made it out of that life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I did 7 years in prison. I've been home for 7, and there's still people I know that are doing the exact same thing 14 years later with nothing, like house to house, couch to couch.
And this is the main message that I speak to kids, is that your friend group matters. Who you give access to matters.
That is. So I always ask at the end, and that could be your answer. So if you can use that, but or you can come up with something else. I would say, hey, what is one piece of advice that if you could give to yourself at 16 or to a kid at, some random kid at 16 years old?
It's that. It all comes back to who you give access to, right? And so when we're 16 years old, we know right from wrong. Yeah. We just make choices to go whichever way we were going to go. But your friend group matters. So my story, for instance, right? So when I hung out with drug dealers, meth cooks, all that stuff, I became that, right? When I hung out with business owners, I became that. When I hang out with Christians, I became that,
so good.
Right? So my grandpa would say, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's true. If there's, 4 people smoking, you're going to be smoking. If there's 4 people, doing drugs, you're going to do that.
It even correlates to your income. I know that's, but like they say you take the top 5 people you associate with and take the average of that income, and you're going to be right there.
That's you. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when we were running the business, I had access to millionaires, and that's what it is, man. You will morph into who you give access to.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And that's my advice.
No, I think that's perfect. And that's one of my favorite ones. Is,
be very careful
who you allow into your life and who you let speak into your life, and who, because we bring negativity into our lives, let people speak negativity into us. And next thing you know, you're starting to believe the things, or you're starting to go along with them, and
you become that.
Man, Dax, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
You've been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
Absolutely. So, remember, you guys, if you got anything out of this, or even if you think that someone else could, if you could share it, or, like it, or comment or something, and just leave us a review. Anything helps us to be able to push on this with the algorithm. But again, Dax, thank you very much.
Of course.
Everyone listen, I want you to remember that you're loved and you're forgiven, and there's nothing you can do about it. Peace.